Okay, well, hello everyone, and I hope everyone had an opportunity to listen to Carl and Wendy. If not, it has been recorded, so that's awesome. I love this feature. And what we're going to be doing right now is we're going to be talking about critiquing. This is something that we always do before we break up into different critique groups, but I'm actually going to do a little twist on it. And in case we have readers here who are going to be reading for our contest, I'm actually going to kind of show how you can use the critique rules when you're critiquing someone's entry. And just the same way as when you're in a critique group with your other fellow authors and you're reading your scenes, you always say something positive. That is absolutely the most important thing to remember, to always get out of critiquing. And this holds true absolutely 100% when you're a reader for the contest. I actually have printed off, Jennifer gave me the actual categories that you would be looking at in order to critique, an entry. And they start out with the synopsis. So in other words, you would be reading that synopsis. You always start out with positive. So how this works is, for the guidelines for the critique, is that you want to work on a critique as though you are going to help this person. You're going to help that person improve their craft. And the way you do that is listening to their writing and actually being aware of where things pull you out, and usually the 9 times out of 10, the biggest thing is point of view. Point of view, an agent and editor once told me, is usually what they look for. And whether the person, if the author does not understand point of view, if the author is all over the map on point of view, if they don't have reactions and emotional input into these characters, they consider that author a newbie. And that is one of the first things that they reject. So point of view is extremely important. So whether you're critiquing in a group and listening to your fellow critique partners, or whether you're in the contest, you listen for point of view. Now, does anyone have any questions about point of view before I begin? Okay, yes, Candace. Oops. Candace.
What happens if your main character is not in chapter 1? In other words, if the point of view does not start at the very beginning.
It doesn't, regardless of whether your main character is in chapter 1 or chapter 14, point of view will be in chapter 1. So you have to have a point of view, and that point of view has to be strong and apparent. So it doesn't matter, whatever point of view. Are you thinking that you've got omniscient?
Yeah, well, in other words, setting the scene and setting, in my case, I have it setting for a massacre that's going to occur.
Got you. Okay, so that's omniscient. So that's a great question. Omniscient is the same thing. I mean, omniscient has to be strong. Omniscient, though, is something that's very distracting and very distancing. So you have to be aware that it can be a distancing tactic. So that doesn't, what you want to do when you're writing and when you're listening to critique is you want to make sure that you are right there. So some of the critique rules are this. You must be very, I'm sorry, Jennifer, you had a question?
Oh, just when you're ready, I have a question for you.
Yeah, yes, you have a question?
Yes, Mary, she wants to know, how does POV relate to nonfiction?
Okay, so POV, it's the same thing. Basically, when you've got nonfiction, I'm assuming that maybe you're writing a memoir, you still have to be in that person's point of view very strongly. And the way you get into that person strongly is by their reactions. So in other words, if, say, for example, you've written a scene and someone throws a baseball at your character's head, they are going to have a reaction. That's part of point of view. That's part of emotion. So the person is not just going to stand there and get hit. And if they are hit, they're going to have a reaction. If they are hit and have a reaction, they're going to have inner thoughts. Okay, that strengthens the point of view. Whether you're writing memoir, first person, third person, it doesn't matter. It's the reactions of the character that strengthens your point of view. So it doesn't matter whether you're writing memoirs, It's nonfiction, fiction is all the same. So yes, yeah, another question.
And basically, they wanted to ask for any books that we could recommend on learning how to write good POV. And
So
I was saying the books I read are my best teachers.
yes, it could possibly. That's a good one, Jennifer. But you are going to find some notorious is Nora Roberts, who flip flops all over the place in point of view, and unfortunately, she can do that. She can literally do whatever she wants. She's actually a beautiful writer. You cannot, so you cannot do that. It's sort of, I use this example of Picasso. If anyone knows the history of Picasso, his father made him learn all the techniques of all the masters. And he learned this by the time he was 12. I think that's the age. And then his father said, now that you know the rules, you can break them. Okay. So I'm going to say the same thing. As soon as you know the rules, you can break them. Okay. However, the caveat is point of view. You have to be very careful with point of view because it can be distracting. It can pull your reader out of the story and you will get confused as to who is speaking. And remember that your number one goal as a writer is that you want your reader to connect to the story. And the way they connect to the story is not your plot. It is not. It may be, okay, I want to read a mystery, so they'll read a mystery, or science fiction, or romance, but they connect always to the characters. And if the characters aren't fully formed, if the point of view is not strong, if the emotion is not strong, they'll stop writing or stop reading. So when you're in a critique group, the main thing that you want to be listening for is not whether, and that's why when we're in a critique in these groups, one of the rules is you read your scene. You don't give them a copy so they can read along, because it really doesn't matter where your commas and your are. It really doesn't, because you got a copy editor for that. What's important is the emotional connection. And when you're a reader and you're judging the contest and forming your critique answers, you're looking at for that connection. The most wonderful thing is if you read an entry and you thought, oh my God, I'm so excited about this. It's so beautifully written that I forgot to critique it. So that's going to be an easy one, because then you have to, I've had to do that and I've been so excited that I have to read it again because I got so lost in the story. And that's what you want to do. That is your goal, to get, that is for the reader to get lost in the story. And they do that with the connection with the characters. So what you're doing is when you're reading these entries, or when you're in a critique group, your best feedback is you can say, I was pulled out of the story. You never say it sucks. You never say negative words. I was pulled out of the story. Is the best terminology to use. I was pulled out of this story because I was not clear on the point of view character. Now, you can go a step further in your critique and you can say, if you are, because I was pulled out, I think perhaps there needs to be more reactions. Maybe your character can have more reactions to getting hit with a baseball. Okay. And that would really help. You want to be helpful. You do not ever want to be snarky. You don't want to ever be condescending. You never want to put yourself like I'm feeling better than they are, because everybody, I remember the first contest that I entered, and oh my God, I was scared to death. Absolutely scared to death. A stranger is going to read my stuff. And, no more is Aunt Molly going to read it, but a stranger. And, Aunt Molly was really kind, but, I don't know what a stranger is really going to think. So people who enter these contests have a tremendous amount of courage, and we want to respect that. We want to, because we were there once, we still are there. And I guarantee you, when you first, I submitted a book to my publisher a couple months ago, and I was a nervous wreck until I got the feedback back. I thought, oh my God, and so it never goes away. You always get, feeling, this is a mess. And so remember that, you're not alone. And so we're going to respect everyone and be kind, extremely kind. The next important thing that you're going to be looking at, either in a critique group or in when your reader, is the setting. Is the setting clear? Where, that's another thing that a new author could forget to put in. You want to layer where the story takes place, because it's going to take place someplace, and that setting can reflect the emotions of the character. For example, it was a gorgeous day today, really, really hot. So everybody's, I don't know about you, but I was walking around, everybody's in a good mood, everyone's smiling, Well, go a step further in your writing and in your critiquing. You could say, it was really sunny out, but I wasn't sure how the character felt about it being sunny. Because remember, whatever you put in your book, there's a reason for it. So that also helps the author say, oh man, I'm going to put that in my book, and that will help the emotional connection. Either they're happy that it's sunny, or maybe they're sad that it's sunny. Maybe there's a reason that they don't like the sun. Whatever that reason happens to be. Because not everybody likes the sun, and that would be a really cool twist. The person's out in the sun and she can't stand it, or he can't stand it, so that's really cool. Jennifer, do you have a question? I'm sorry. Okay, cool.
No.
So basically we've got the synopsis, and when you're looking for, I'll go through these a little bit at a time really fast, and if there's any questions, please raise your hand or do a chat thing. A synopsis, what you're looking for in a synopsis, is there a beginning, middle, and end? Think of a synopsis as a book report with the ending clear. When you're writing a synopsis, you have to tell the ending. Do not ever say, you have to read my book, because they don't have to. I'm not, you really have to. And this is good practice, because your editors, publishers, most of the editors these days are requiring a synopsis, even if you're multi-published. They want the synopsis with the manuscript, and they want to know the ending. And why do you think they want to know the ending? Anybody? Because they want to know if you have a story. Okay, it's not going to ruin it for them. They want to know the story. They want to know that you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they can tell. Now, for you who are maybe looking for how to write a synopsis, or how to judge a synopsis, if you have someone that uses the Save the Cat beats or Christopher Bulger's beats, put those into a synopsis, and that will form a great outline for a synopsis. So when you're judging a synopsis, always say, oh, this is a great story, this is a great plot, I loved your characters, and then you can go on to say, but there's no ending. I don't know how this ends, and you need to have that in the synopsis. Or I really wasn't sure with the conflict or the theme of the story. Viewpoint, we talked about viewpoint. Characterization, are the characters clear? Are each character distinct? In other words, can you tell one character from another, or do they all blur together? You want the characterizations clear. And this actually goes back to point of view. It really does. Everything a lot of times goes back to point of view. It really is a strength for everything. So you can say to the people, yes, I loved your characters. I was in love with your characters. And the thing that I would suggest for readers, use examples. Whenever I've been critiquing for these contests, I will use examples on page 30 or page 27. I really love the line that you put here, or maybe on page 14, the point of view wasn't clear. So that way you're literally helping your readers, your authors, know where to fix the issue, to where it really was that you were pulled out of the story. You never ever as a reader want to say, I think the question is, what was well done? Please offer some suggestions for improvements. Those are great questions. But you never want to say yes or no. You know, like for example, yes, the viewpoint was clear, and then that is not your, that is only the beginning of your answer. That just, you know, because you think in terms of, I'm going to have write at least 3 or 4 sentences, you know, because I want to make sure that my message is clear. Dialogue, and we talked a little bit about internal narrative. Is the dialogue clear? Do you know who's talking? Again, going back to point of view. And, you know, that's another where you can say it's not clear to me. And again, use an example. Page 10, I was not sure who was talking. The dialogue wasn't clear. The motivation wasn't clear. Conflict, tension, pacing. Does this book move quickly? Are there hooks at the end of chapters and end of scenes? Does it move along, or does it slow down? You know, and if it does slow down, can you maybe pinpoint that for the author? Hooks and transitions. I absolutely love hooks. I have no idea, but I love hooks. I put hooks after everything. And is a transition clear? You know, are they going from one scene to the other clearly? Now, a little clue on transitions is if you end a sentence, you end a scene with, say, they drove up to a cliff. Okay, so that's the end of the scene. So the beginning of the next scene or next chapter, you need, as an author, to mention that cliff. Okay, that would connect one scene to the other. So that's how you, so if you are not doing that, then that's something that you want to do. If when you're a reader and you're talking about somebody and they don't do that, their transitions are not clear, you can suggest that to them. You know, you can suggest, you know, whatever question you posed in the previous scene, answer it in the scene that follows. You know, setting a description of, I love setting descriptions, so make sure they do have it. Now here's one that's an interesting one. It's voice, tone, and style. And the tone really kind of connects with setting and atmosphere. And you can also think of this as a way of, if this was a middle grade book, did that storyline structure fit what your vision of a middle grade is? A romance is, a mystery, a thriller, whatever the genre happens to be. With voice, let's see how many people are here. How many people are here? 44. Okay, so I guarantee you there are 44 voices here. So if that's one of those fun things that everybody has a voice. You know, you have a unique style. My way of writing is different than Candace. Candace is different than Connie. Connie's different than Michelle. We all have our own voice, and the more we write, the more clear it becomes. Okay, so do you feel connected? Is there a tone? Mechanics. Now mechanics, we have this toward the end, and this is, you know, basically my least favorite thing to critique, to be perfectly frank with you. It's, you know, but some people love the grammar part, so go for it. But again, I've always believed that you can get a grammarian to check out your work before you send it off to your publisher or your agent. I always do that. And then they'll do some more grammar stuff to make sure you've got commas in the right place. So with this one, I would be gentle. I would not get into the weeds about this. You know, you could say this felt very smooth. There was a few grammar, you know, issues. You're looking now, if they're completely, you know, don't have any paragraph indentations, you know, things like that, then you can mention that. But again, go gentle on this one. So the next one is details. Leaving the right amount of description, partially up to the reader, can allow them to use their own imagination and make reading a more immersive experience. So basically 10 is, if you have anything else to say that would be helpful that you feel to the person, you can put that in here. Okay. I would have fun with this. I enjoy being a contest reader. There's so many fantastic stories out there. I learn an awful lot when I'm reading and critiquing because I'm going, oh my God, that person did that beautifully, and so you can really relish how they're writing. And I guarantee you that every single solitary story has can be turned into a bestseller, can be turned into a published novel. I was watching PBS had a special, a 3-part special on Hemingway, and he rewrote the ending, I think was Farewell to Arms, 47 times. And this is Hemingway. So I'm just thinking, if he can rewrite, we can rewrite. And so that's what we're having to do, is just to help people to see how they can make it better. Yes, Jennifer. Oops, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
No
How
worries.
do you address hooks when the book is in 2 POVs and switches every few chapters? The hook may be unanswered for a few chapters.
Okay, so this gets into one of my classes that I teach. So a published multi-gazillion published author said that there should be a hook after every 800 words. Okay, you should put hooks in your dialogue. The hooks should be the hooks, or help the pacing. That's what helps you turn the page, is the hooks. And the hooks are not like just a cliffhanger. So like, for example, in dialogue, you never do this, hi, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. It's, hi, how are you? Why did you? And then the next person says, why'd you kill my dog? So that's a hook, okay? And basically, you're always thinking, how can I build a conflict in this? So in my classes, I have them turn in 3 pages for me to review. And I do that because what usually happens, not usually, always happens, is that because they know that they have to turn in 3 pages, they make sure that it's a complete scene, because I won't read. I only read 3 pages. I won't read 4. I just tell them, and I'll stop reading if it's 4. And so what they do is they make this a complete scene, and then they put a hook on the end of that, on that 3rd page. And you get into the habit of knowing that you have to have hooks more often, and it becomes second nature. You get so that it just becomes second nature. You're always making sure that there's conflict. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for if they have put hooks in, and that because hooks help the pacing. Let's face it. If you don't know what's going on, for example, in my example, hi, how are you? Now the person says, why'd you kill my dog? Do we want to know what the answer is? Yes, it's a book all by itself. So yes, does that answer that? Okay. Okay, what other questions?
I don't know if it's a question, but someone was saying that they usually mention the flow of the book under mechanics. I wouldn't, because mechanics is more about grammar and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The flow is like pacing. The flow is really, the flow is actually kind of can incorporate in a lot of the things that we're talking about, but it has to do with the pacing, has to do with those hooks. It's basically why you keep reading, and you keep reading if you're engaged, and you're engaged because you're interested in the characters, and that's because the characters are compelling, and they're interesting, and they're complicated, and they're dysfunctional. So we're writing very dysfunctional characters.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay,
Like
cool.
I said, anybody else?
So you just enjoy it and realize that this, when you critique, whether you're in a critique group or where you're a reader and you're critiquing, the fact that you have to pay attention to these makes you a stronger writer, because it's foremost in your mind. So that's, I can't emphasize how awesome that is, because I remember the classes when I was teaching, I've got an embarrassing amount of writing books, And I was always referring to them, always learning something new, to help my students, but it was also helping me. So it's really cool stuff.
All right. I think maybe this is our last question.
Okay.
If you get a middle grade submission that is obviously young adult or vice versa, how do you handle that? And I actually have an opinion about this, but I'll let Pam go first.
Oh,
okay.
Go for it, Jennifer.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, critique the writing. Is it good writing? Are you, all these things that Pam just said. First and foremost, critique what you're reading. Then that actually would be a good thing to mention.
Yeah.
But, after you've read all of that, after you've told them what, everything about their writing that's good and what you think needs improvement, then you say, you entered this as a middle grade, but I really feel this is a young adult. You might want to think about that and maybe provide a resource for them that they could try to figure out what they're writing.
That's perfect. That's exactly correct, because sometimes people think it blurs between middle grade and YA. It doesn't when you get in the weeds and realize what middle grade and YA is. But when you first start writing, it seems like it blurs. Right now, the subject matter for middle grade is much more advanced than the books used to be 10 years, 15 years, certainly 20 years ago. So, but yeah, if you do know that it's when they say it's middle grade, but it really is YA, that's so helpful to let them know that. So that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect.
So great. Okay. So I guess that's it for the question and answer section.